Good morning and welcome to our 10 most asked questions about sharks. I'm Cristina and I'm doing this from the Bahamas. So first of all, this is live and I'm in the Bahamas, and if the internet has some issues, so please don't go away. I'll try to log in again as soon as possible. While I'm doing the presentation, I'm going to answer some of the questions that I've received through the years about sharks in general and about the work that I've completed with sharks. You can wait until the end of the presentation to write some of the questions, but you have one in mind, you can write it in the comments. Remember, you need a YouTube channel account in order to write comments and ask the questions, and I'll address them at the end of my talk. I've been working with sharks for about 26 years. I worked with Bahamas, and my primary sharks are Caribbean reef sharks and a little bit the nurse sharks. We don't really know everything about sharks. We don't really know everything about the ocean. So I will try to answer the questions as the best as I can. Sometimes I might say, I'm sorry, I do not have the question. I don't have the answer. As many of us still don't really know everything. We're still discovering new shark species, and we're still discovering new things about shark species that we already know, and you'll see that during the presentation. So without any further ado, let me start with my slideshow. So the first question that I receive is, which shark is the most aggressive? I'm usually given choice of these primary four sharks. So up from the left is the great white, and then on the right hand side is the tiger shark, followed by the great hammerhead, and the one in the corner is the bull shark. Let's define aggressive. Sometimes when this question is asked in a general understanding that maybe the shark is mean or is angry or anything like that. Aggressive in animal world is a behavior that basically is used as a communication, and it usually has an intent. So sharks are not aggressive just to be mean or just to be angry. They usually have either a territorial attitude or they all have a prey attitude. In general, sharks are equipped to do what they're supposed to do as sharks. So their way of hunting may appear to us as a perception of being aggressive, but at the end of the day, that's how nature designed them to hunt their prey or dismember their prey or eat their prey. So we can't consider that just being aggressive. We just need to put it into a little bit of a context. It's what I call, we need to try to avoid to do an anthropomorphic interpretation of a shark behavior. So we need to stop comparing sharks not only to our perception of the world and the way we see the world, but also the way sometimes people compare sharks to bears or sharks to a bird or anything like that. We can't compare sharks to anything else. The sharks are sharks, and we need to start understanding a little bit how they act. In general, most sharks will avoid confrontation. If they can swim away from you, they will. If they feel that the confrontation is not going to produce anything, they're also going to go away. I use this example, which is an interpretation of a behavior. When we see our dog eating, we'll never judge this based on our way of eating, because if that would be the case, we would expect our dog to use a fork and knife and a bib and obviously not slurp the food out of the bowl. So the same way we accept a dog behavior on the way they eat their food, we also need to start understanding and accepting shark behavior into what is their regular environment. And again, aggressiveness in that context of hunting food doesn't really fit. Is more, remember, it's a matter of communications as many other animals. This is the same thing for mating sharks. This is a video taken off the coast of Grand Bahama, and mating sharks, the female picks the males through resistance. And in many occasions, the male, which is the one you see choking on her pectoral fin, trying to force it into mating, has been described as violent and as forceful, but this is how nature designed that. So it's the males all try to subdue the female, and the female picks. They basically find the strongest male, and if the males are not strong enough, she will simply elect to not pick them as her personal mates, as you will see here. So again, it's a different interpretation of a behavior. This is not violent nor forceful. This is just as nature's design. And if you look in other species, maybe the males select themselves first. And here she goes. So this is just to understand a little bit like of the lack of anthropomorphic behavior of sharks. The next question that I received, number 2, it used to be number 1, but it's turned into number 2. The aggressive shark is now number 1, is how to avoid a shark attack. And the reason why I believe is every time we say the word shark, we actually hear the music from Jaws, or we expect what I just posted as a picture. As soon as I hit the water, it's going to be a shark is going to swim towards me, it's going to try to eat me or bite me or anything like that. So the first thing I tell people is saying sharks is like saying birds. There are over 500 species of sharks. And if I said all birds are black, or all birds can fly, or all birds can nest in the trees, we will all agree, even with the limited knowledge we have about birds, that is not really the truth. So it's the same thing with sharks. Every time we receive the general questions, how to avoid a shark attack? My answer is usually, where are you and what kind of shark you talk about? Because are we talking about the dwarf lantern shark, the smaller shark in the world, the size of a pen? Or are we talking about the biggest shark in the world, the whale shark that feeds on plankton? And then in between all the sharks, all these birds, quote unquote, we have sharks that maybe we never encounter, like the goblin shark that feeds on like mollusks, or maybe the guitar shark, or even the wobbegong shark. Shark that if I showed a picture and I didn't say this is a shark, people wouldn't even be able to realize that it's actually a shark. So what we need to do, rather than say, what do we need to do about this shark, is we need to understand their habitat and their behavior. And we sharks in our areas and how they operate, 99% of the time is very safe to go in the water with sharks. We just need to understand sometimes is not our moment to go in the water with them. Question number 3 is, can I go in the water with? I've been spending a lot of my years on boats with a lot of divers, and it's very normal sometimes to bump into a bench or to scrape your knee, and half joke, half with a nervous laugh, people show their little bleeding finger, the little scraped knee, and they go, oh, can I go in the water with? And it's sometimes even such a small little thing. So let me start by saying that sharks are not attracted to human blood. And if you look at the existence of sharks on this planet compared to the existence of humans on this planet, it would have been very hard for them to survive on feeding on us, as we appeared several hundred millions later after them. It is true the sharks have a very strong sense of smell. They have 2 nostrils placed underneath their nose. Every species has those, and those 2 giant nostrils basically spend their day analyzing the water that goes through it. They don't use it for breathing, they just use it for basically analyzing. So the water eddies through the nose keeps basically analyzing it. And they try to detect interest particles. So many have also heard that a shark can detect 1 particle of blood in 1,000,000 particles of water. What we fail to remember or really address is the fact that still that particle of water has to go through their nose. So why do people say a shark can detect 1 particle of blood through 1,000,000 particles of water? Is to express how keen their sense of smell is. It's one of their strongest senses. But it's not that if the particle of blood is a mile away, they'll be able to detect it. It still has to go through their nose. So what we also need to think about is a little bit what I call the return on investment. Let me give you a clear example. Imagine you study for 5, 7, 8 years, but instead of receiving your bachelor, your master's, and your PhD, somebody says, congratulations, that was great, you have so much more knowledge now, that is very good for you. The question is, would you have put in the same effort? And you can apply that in everything. We do work at our level for a return on investment. Basically, is a ratio between the profit, the net profit that you obtain, and the cost of your investment. So for a shark, when they detect a little particle of blood, is what is the investment? What is the return? Am I going to swim all these miles to pursue this little scent, this little faint thing? Or this that I actually feel is something that actually could give me a rewarding result? And inside this question, there's another question that I usually receive, and it is a painful one. I'm not making light of it. Sharks have been showing up at catastrophic human events like sinking of ships or airplane wreckages. So why do they do that? Is the general amount of inputs that are in the water. At this point, we're not talking about just a little bit of blood or a general small injury that we can incur, but is imagine a ship sinking. Imagine the canteen food. Imagine the people, unfortunately, have all sorts of different level of injury. Some may have completely experienced loss of members or complete loss of blood. Some may have drowned. So the output is the one that unfortunately will attract sharks, which are cleaner of the oceans, in the sense that they will feel that there's a lot of creatures that are maybe dying or dead or have, major injuries. So the scenario by which a shark is attracted to human blood is just bigger than a simple cut or simple bleeding. Number 4, do sharks have a bad eyesight? The shark eye is similar to the human and many other species, but it has 2 special characteristics. One is they can actually see underwater, which we can't, and they also have something called the tapetum lucidum. The tapetum lucidum is a tissue that is formed by many mirror crystals and is right behind the retina, and it's right this one here. And when the light enters the eye, instead of being absorbed, it's actually reflected back. It's basically like a mirror, and what it allows the shark to do is to expand and contract their pupil. Like human eyes, if you have too much light in your eye, your pupil will get smaller, and if it's dark, your pupil will expand. This is something that only sharks can do. The other fish in the ocean actually cannot dilate and restrict your pupil. All right. Shark's vision is also can be defined as a stereoscopic or monocular. Stereoscopic is basically they can see with both eyes and do an image in their brain, which is a connection of the images received by both eyes, usually on either side of the head. And then monocular is the vision used with just one eye, which allows them to focus really, really carefully on just that side and that specific. They have different fields of vision depending on the species. Dr. Miki Mekom-Kabza is one of the professors that I've been listening to and following their work, and she specializes in shark vision. She has all sorts of information about the field of vision of a hammerhead versus Caribbean reef sharks. But she also studied a little bit like the shark's eyes in terms of, do sharks see in colors? That's a big question as well. So before, sharks were thought to only be able to see in black and white. People knew they had what are called rod cells in their eyes, which detects basically shadows and movement. But many sharks has also been found with cone cells, and cone cells allow animals and us as well to detect colors. Now, the extent of which the colors are seen is still being understudied, and Dr. Kabza was saying that most likely sharks that live in the blue water will see more into the shades of blue, and sharks that, for example, live on the reef might have a capability of seeing more colors and distinguish over them. What we need to remember when we talked about sharks' vision, and I'm using this example, which is my cave diving in the Bahamas, is not about good eyesight or bad eyesight. It's about good visibility or bad visibility. These are two totally different caves. I repeat, good visibility and bad visibility. And independently from my vision, in one cave, I will be able to see over 100 feet ahead of me, and in the other cave, maybe I'll be able to see few inches ahead of me. So if we're talking about also where the sharks are, which sharks in which environment, then the vision also needs to take that in consideration. Question number 5 that I get is, do sharks have to swim in order to breathe? Now I had to put the breathe into quote unquote, because actually sharks do not breathe, they actually ventilate. In order to breathe, we have to be able to inhale gaseous substance. What sharks do through their 5, 6, or 7 gill slits, they can actually extract the oxygen from the water that washes through their mouth. So all sharks have a system called ram ventilation. A ram ventilation is when you see a shark swimming around, has a slacked jaw, the water flows through their mouth into their gills, and the gills extract the oxygen. But a lot of sharks, contrary to popular belief, actually can sit on the ocean floor and pump water through their gills through a system called buccal pumping. And what they do is they open and close their mouth, and as they do that, that gentle open and closes siphons the water into sacs behind their jaws and squeezes the water through the gills that you can see expanding out and pulsating, being sucked in into a vacuum, and allows the sharks still to basically ventilate. And a lot of species of shark have this system of that. That allows my sharks, the Caribbean reef sharks, to actually lay comfortably on the ocean floor as I touch and I pet them. So to answer that question, which I receive a lot of times, is no, I don't suffocate my sharks to death while I cuddle them on the ocean floor. Question number 6. This comes more into the world of my work, is what happens when you don't feed them. A lot of comments that I receive, a lot of misconceptions about them is that basically when we stop feeding sharks, the sharks will hunt humans and bite them and eat them because we use them to food. Let's go back to the concept of not anthropomorphic interpretation of shark behavior. So let's think about sharks as the sharks themselves, creatures with 7 senses. They have a sensory system that is so much higher than their cognitive learning. They're capable basically of discerning the feeder from the watcher. Like in this case, feeding sharks in front of people that are watching, the sharks will be going towards the feeder and swim over the people that are just a few feet away without basically disturbing them. And the reason why is they can tell where the source of food is through their senses. So they detect that. On a Friday 17th at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I will actually address more of the shark feeding and shark safety. This is a different talk I'm going to be doing through the Diver Medic, so stay tuned. I'm going to post also that link. I'm not here to talk about this. This is just more about what happens when I don't feed them. Actually, nothing happened. This is a video of me after feeding the sharks. The blue tube you see on the bottom is actually the food, and all I'm doing is stretching my arms out and spinning in circle, and the sharks know the feed is over, the food is done, and yet those are the hands that have just been feeding them, and they just swim around in circles, well knowing the differences. So this is something to start looking at instead of sitting at home and just making up ideas. Is just look at the reality of things. We also go scuba diving a lot with our sharks, or free diving with them. So here I am free diving with my sharks. As you see, no protection. So when I'm not feeding the sharks, and now when I'm not working with them directly with food, I can happily go scuba diving and take everyone else's scuba diving with them. Sharks are aware of human presence. They might be curious, but at the same time, they know the difference. So it is, I think, something very interesting to see and notice. And then refer to putting the sharks to sleep. Again, this is a question I received about my work. Am I inducing tonic immobility? So tonic immobility is a reaction of creatures in the wild, not only sharks, that is usually caused by stress or threat, or it's an imposed reaction. I try to keep my interaction with sharks very, very gentle, and I obviously don't impose my presence to them. Some people think that the ampullae lorenzini, which is the high organ sensor system that they have on their nose, the little dot that you see right here underneath their nostrils, that look like enlarged pores, are one of the reasons why sharks may relax into my lap, or the reason why I do tonic immobility. So a little bit about the ampullae lorenzini. They're little kind of like gel-filled caps that the external pore are these little dots that you sew against the skin, and I basically have a nerve ending in, it seems to detect electromagnetic fields. They basically have this sensor, and it's all around their face and all around their nose and all of that. So you hear it is caused by manipulating the nose of the shark. And in the past, to be honest with you, I thought the same. I thought that manipulation of the animal was needed in order to pet them. I've been doing this for 26 years, and if you look at some of my videos of 25 years ago, you'll see that I'm petting the shark quite a lot around the nose. But then I realized that it was not that. And I realized that through the fact that if everyone manipulated the sharks wearing the suit that is supposed to interact with the ampullae lorenzini, everyone should be able to put the sharks to sleep. But that doesn't happen either. The sharks come up to me and rest in my lap. Sometimes they surprise me from behind. This is Foggy Eye. She just tapped me into my back. I do not touch all the sharks, nor put to sleep all the sharks. I have specific sharks that have been working with me and diving with me sometimes 10 to 13 years. And it's their choice to come in. Sometimes is their double choice to come in. Sometimes is their triple choice to come in. And is their decision to stay or leave. If you look at this image, there's no way I can force any of these three animals to sit in my lap with any manipulation. So they just come in at any given time and then they go. I just let them decide. The key to this is time that we spend together. The time that I spent knowing them, and the respect of allowing them on any specific day to come in or not come in. This is not something that is guaranteed every day. Every day, each shark can behave different. There's a day when grandma wants to lay on my lap, and there's a day when grandma doesn't want to lay on my lap. I do apologize. I thought I took the volume down. There it is. So I kiss the sharks to show people that I love sharks. You'll never hear me saying the sharks love me. But as you can tell, there's nothing forceful, because as soon as I let the shark go a little bit, she comes in for a little bit of an extra cuddle, and again, not much of a forceful interaction. And then sometimes they show up in two, and I think this video also have that they show up in three. There it is, the little nurse sharks. That's Golden Boy, comes in and disturbs. And in this moment, the sharks are completely awake and aware. They can stay, they can move, and they can decide what to do. So why do I wear a chain suit if sharks are not dangerous? And the chain suit is there to prevent what I call accidental bites. I mean, in my line of work, as you can see from this video, accidental bites are very, very much very common. There it is. But But it's like wearing a helmet or wearing a seatbelt when you're going on a bike or when you drive a car. We don't expect to have an accident each time we drive a car, hopefully not, and we don't expect to fall off the bike. Otherwise, we should have kept on our training wheels. But in case it happens, we have the seatbelt and we have the helmet to protect us. And if you remember from the video earlier on, what happens when I don't feed them is, again, I had my arms stretched out and the sharks never attempted to basically bite me. This allows me to introduce people to the world of sharks in a safe manner, maybe people that don't have the amount of time that I've been spending with them. So by wearing protection, they can come in closer contact with the sharks. They can do something that it might be frowned upon, but again, if a shark didn't want it to be pet, in a split of the second, they could actually avoid my touch and not being done. But what it does is allow these people to come close to them and also learn something different about who they are. Furthermore, what it helps me doing is something that I started doing, and I'm going to talk in a little bit, which is removing hooks. And yes, the sharks have 2 to 15 rows of teeth, the Caribbean reef sharks especially. So when I go in to remove hooks, it is imperative that I wear some sort of protection. This was maybe the most famous hook removal that I ever done. This is Foggy Eye, who came in with a fishing wire, big fishing wire sticking out of her mouth. It took me about 40 minutes of this to be able to convince her to relax, and then I went in and removed the hook with a great success. Is one maybe that inspired quite a lot of the people. And removing the hooks is something that I want to do. Why do I want to remove the hooks? Is very simple. If somebody asked me, how would you describe sharks? I would say sharks are extremely vulnerable. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But primarily, these are my sharks. These are my babies. And the same way I would want to remove a thorn out of the paw of my dog that has been running through the bush and comes out and holds the paw and doesn't want to walk, the same way I want to remove the hooks. Many people have told me that I should just let the hooks rust. There's this concept, it's like, well, animals like sharks don't feel pain, it's just pointless what you're doing, you can't save all the sharks in the world, and just let them rest. So I would like to quote a dear friend and marine biologist, Luke Tipple, who sent me this message one, and he said, anyone who tries to argue the natural process of man-introduced object degrading in an animal body or flesh needs both a lesson in biology and empathy. And that is the concept. These hooks are introduced by us, and for me, they actually need to be removed. Sometimes because I see the infections, the swollen jaws, their difficulties, their fastidious, and their incapability, like in this case, to eat. I give a fish that's crook, and she completely spit it out because her jaw hurt from the hook. What is amazing is, obviously, sharks don't understand pain, so as soon as it hurts and I start to touch it, they want to swim away. But these sharks, what they do is also understand I'm trying to help, and this is Crook again with the same hook coming back later. She's a queen for collecting hooks, and she lets me try many times over. And here she comes again. This is the same dive, the same video. So they do understand, but like any animal, they won't sit there enduring pain like we would do if we're sitting on the dentist chair. We might endure a little bit more pain knowing that there is a little bit of relief coming afterwards. But what is amazing is that in a dive, a shark will let me try for 30, 40 minutes for me to remove the hook. And I do this by hand. A lot of people have told me, you should use pliers, you should use this, you should this. I tried many tools through the years, but at the end of the day, my hands is the only one that work. So what do I try to achieve with that is I try to create ambassadors. These are my sharks. This is my little pack. This is my little school of sharks. I can't expect to save all the sharks in the world. I know that. But I hope that by removing hooks, I may present people with a different view on sharks. A view that highlights them as animals who may be suffering and may be hurting and may be afraid and may be fighting for their lives, their reproduction and their presence in the ocean, whose our presence in a certain way is also disrupts. So that's the reason why I remove hooks. Hopefully for every hook I remove, somewhere else in the world decides that something needs to be done to protect sharks. And it doesn't necessarily mean having to remove hooks. It may mean something to help sharks. Which comes into the next question. Why sharks? I've been asked this so many times. Why are you so obsessed with sharks? I've been in love with sharks since I was 8 years old. My childhood dream was to have sharks for friends and be an underwater scuba ranger that will roam the oceans and tell divers and visitors alike what to do, what not to do. The best part of it is I was expecting to be able to stay in the water without having my mom telling me what to do, which was getting out of the water because my lips were purple. So I grew up in a family of the ocean, and I was always taught that there are no monsters in the sea, only in our head. And so I grew up with a notion that sharks are a vital component of the complicated, very complex ocean web. This picture has very, very minimal understanding of that. But one of the things we forget sometimes as humans is on this web actually kind of like returns to us. There's about 70% of the world's population that has a reliance on the ocean directly. And then the entire world has a reliability on the ocean, due what the ocean do for climate, for nature, for all of that. But this is not part of this stuff. We humans make sharks vulnerable through our presence, through modern and destructive way of fishing. We consumers make sharks' presence in the ocean vulnerable in our expectations of always finding all sorts of kind of fish available at all time of the years without understanding that maybe they should be seasoning, which is something is not available to eat, same as strawberries in the winter. We use destructive drift nets, long line. We cause direct and indirect death of sharks. We also take much of their food by bycatch. And then they become the victims of basically anything that we leave out there. We also poison at industrial levels. And this has to do with what are we doing not only to the sharks but to the ocean. We don't even realize it. We are poisoning everything that is believed that should not belong in our garden. We have a skewed vision of our natural environment. I'll give you an example. For me, it's very close to home. If there's snails in the garden, there's this attitude in, well, we need to spray poison to kill the snails in the garden. But when I turn around, especially here in the Bahamas, I see a lot of birds that could benefit from eating those snails. Unfortunately, if those snails have been poisoned, chances are we might poison also the birds. So my question is, why don't we let the birds do their job? And why don't we let the snails in the garden? So finding more of a natural balance between ourselves, our food, the food of our food, and what we perceive as should be there or not. These poisons reach underground, underwater, through the rivers. Plastic pollution, which has been highly recognized but still has not found much of a solution. This is what we gather from a beach during an art project with the Pennsylvania School in less than 40 minutes. This is on an abandoned beach on the island of Grand Bahama. Plastic pollution is one of the biggest ones. Coastal development. To the extent of using it, and with that, problems with sound pollution, boat traffic, light pollution, the pollution of thermal changes that we cause into the environment. We are coming closer and closer to their boundaries. We're coming closer and closer to mangrove areas, river estuaries, lagoons and all of that. And what we do is we not only disrupt them directly, but we disrupt their food, we disrupt their nursery grounds. This is in the little shallow waters around here, the island of Grand Bahama. We take away from the ocean faster than the ocean can actually replenish. We have this thought that they are resourceful to infinity. So this is why sharks, because we are attacking them from so many different point of views, and I think they need a little bit of more of our support and help. So I added a bonus question. What can we do to help? Because that's question number 11. I receive that a lot in many forms, like I want to do your job, I want to remove hooks, what should I do, what should I study, and all of that. It's a long answer, but the first one that I would like to say is their ocean, their world, not ours. We benefit from the ocean. 71% of our planet's surface are the oceans. But I think we need to learn to share. And I think we need to learn to move in under their terms, not ours. Culling sharks to make the ocean safer is not the way. Understanding how sharks work, when is a good time to go in the water, when it's not a good time to go in the water, which sharks are in the area, are the things that we need to do. We pride ourselves to be one of the most intelligent creatures on this planet. It's time to manifest that into the relationship that we're establishing with what this planet is doing for us. We can do little things, clean up a little. Every beach walk, every dive that I go on, I always pick up a little bit of garbage. So the picture with you, I cleaned up a little bit that area, which was a picnic area, and then convinced them to help me out a little bit, and we left with a little bit extra of a corner of the beach cleaned. Where my puppies are, that is garbage that I collected with, I usually use garbage to put in more garbage on a regular walk. And then the last picture on the bottom, if you can notice, there's actually my cave gear, but after the cave dive, I walked about 100 yards of the beach and still fitted a little bit of that garbage inside my car. So that is some of the things we can do. If you are eating seafood, here's a website, seafoodwatch.org. There's also an app. You can download it on your phone. They give you best choice, good alternative, avoid, and also not yet rated. It gives you an opportunity, if you're still eating seafood, to maybe make healthier for yourself and for the environment. Example, mercury, which is actually can also harm humans, not only in the marine environment. Small changes, so some of you maybe already do this. Remember, when you go to the restaurant, ask for a glass, no straw. Try not to use throwaway cups. Travel with your water bottle and your coffee cup. Go shopping with canvas bags. Find reusable ways to gift wrap. Use old t-shirts, old wrapping papers if you still have some. Wrap with things that I find on the beach, and use one of the most important things out there, which is Google. Try to make more healthier, like food choices, and that could be on many different levels. Maybe rely more on local farmers if are available. When you package your food, try not to use as much plastic or single-use plastic. Use utensils that can be washed and reused again. So if you eat at work or anything like that, grab containers that then you can wash. It takes a little bit more planning. It takes a little bit more work, but it's something that we can actually all do together. And then you can work on local regulations to protect sharks. There's sometimes a lot of talking about how some of the fishing practices, and one of the worst one is finning, of which I didn't put any pictures, which is the practice of removing fins from live sharks and throwing them back into the ocean, either bleeding to death or basically dying a very slow, painful death. And a lot of people tend to point the fingers away, saying, well, this is something that these people do, or this is something that that country does. But what we fail to realize is that maybe the legislations regarding marine life in general and sharks in particular might be fueling that same demand. So the demand, yes, is out there, and it might be something culture that does not belong to us, right? But our country or our state or our environment actually still fueling that demand. So what can I do in my own country, in my own language, to create position? And all the operators came in and started working on protecting sharks, and we've protected them from import, export, lending, exchange of any of their body parts. And that is what I encourage you, if you're in any part of the world, is work where you are with your language and your power of voting. Because the question is, what would you do if what we're doing to the ocean, instead of killing the ocean and its creatures, will kill one of us? Will we act differently? Will we expect changes? Will we act more drastically? I just attended this morning a conference about a virus that is killing the corals at an incredible rate. And we acted very quickly on the virus that is spreading through the world that is affecting humans. Maybe it's a time to parallel this into the world and realize that the virus that we might be spreading is the one that we also might have to fight to protect a little bit this world. I believe that each one of us can make a difference. So you need to believe that you can make the difference and you can act upon it. It can be one small choice, one big choice. You can do all sorts of different choices. We are single drops, but all together we can make the ocean. If you have any more questions, you can reach me through my website, www.Cristina in January last year, to help me do more of this environmental work. I've put in many years and a lot of personal time, money, not only to work on sharks, but on caves and conservation of our supplies. So if you feel like supporting a little bit more of this work, a small donation is always appreciated. And now we are, see. Which is a more perfect species of sharks in your opinion? Well, actually, every single species of shark is perfect because they've been designed to work in the environment for which they've been built. So if I were to say that the lantern shark is the most perfect species of sharks, but then we brought them into a coastal area in a full shallow water of the Bahamian waters, it obviously wouldn't fare too well because it's designed to live in the ocean depths and see in the darkness of the night. So I would say each shark has evolved into being perfect for their personal environment. Questions. Do you think at this point in time plastic waste is killing our oceans at the same level as shark finning? I know that shark finning is devastating, but nowadays plastic is a plague. This is from Sharktopia. If you never watched Sharktopia, you have to go and look her wonderful designs and inspirational little cute drawings and everything. She's done quite a lot for the conservation about sharks. So plastic, I think, is killing sharks directly, but I think also indirectly. So, and that's the reason why I think it is a plague that can be even bigger than a fin in itself. The reason why is affecting the entire food chain. So it might affect sharks to the level that we've seen that whales have done, have died ingesting plastic. Sooner or later, it will find its way up the food chain and affected in many, many different ways, trapping, drowning, and destroying everything that encompasses around the shark's survival, which is their breeding grounds and mating grounds, not only the sharks themselves. I think the two of them are two of the most atrocious destructions that are coming toward sharks. Are they on online course about sharks? That is one of those questions that I said I might not have the answer. There are a lot of webinars that are being done about sharks. There's another company called Sharks for Kids. Is directly more to kids, but they do full courses. I think you will still have to attend university. Maybe now universities have adopted to online, but that I can completely answer. I'm sorry. Any more questions? I hope I see some people have lost connections. There's a little bit of a delay, so just remember that as well. If I should suggest a book on sharks, I have so many, and a lot of them repeat themselves. By the books by Michael Bright are some of my favorite that I've read, and there's quite a few that he wrote about sharks. So let's see if there's one more question. All right, I would like to thank everyone for participating. This YouTube video will remain on my YouTube channel, so if you feel like sharing it, showing it to classroom, showing it to friends, those people that haven't been able to participate. And I hope to see you again with my next talk. Thank you again.